Dr. Anna.
Thank you so much.
Magandang buhay po sa bawat isa. It's another beautiful Thursday morning as we welcome today our first-timers in this webinar series, and we welcome back today lahat po ng mga nakakwentuhan namin last month in the first episode of Istorya, Impactful Services and Transformative Opportunities in Response to the Needs of the Community and the Academe, hosted by the CvSU Extension Services. And this episode 2 po, it's in partnership with the College of Agriculture, Food, Environment and Natural Resources, College of Arts and Sciences, College of Engineering and Information Technology, and the CvSU Imus Campus. At syempre po, kung usapang kababaihan tayo last month, this episode, usapang kalikasan naman po tayo today. As we bring you this episode or episode 2 with the theme, Sustainable and Collective Efforts to Address Climate Change. Ako po si Lady Aileen, ang inyong tagapagdala ng programa sa umagang ito. And like what you saw on the poster, it's gonna be a jam-packed session po with 3 resource speakers who will share with us today a lot about this topic on nature and climate change. But before that, we would like to remind everyone of our house rules. So to those here with us on Zoom, please make sure that the microphone is on mute to avoid distractions, especially po when our guests are delivering their topics. For questions, you may use the chat box if you are on Zoom, and of course the comment section if you are right now on Facebook Live. So we have 88 participants right now on Facebook Live. Shout out po sa mga nag-good morning sa Facebook. Also, these questions will be picked up by our staff later and will be addressed during the open forum, which will be done after the 3 topics are presented. So, syempre po, ang ating pong comment section, ang ating chat box ay hindi lang po para sa mga tanong. We also encourage you to engage and share insights through this chat box and comment section para po parang nagkukwentuhan po talaga tayo at nagbabahagi ng istorya sa bawat isa. Dahil tandaan po natin, ang bawat ugnayan ay may istorya. We will also send an evaluation form later na kailangan po nating sagutan to get an e-certificate for this activity. Pero mamaya pa po yun. Ang mas mahalaga po right now ay i-share natin sa ating mga kaibigan sa Facebook ang Facebook Live na ito para mas marami po ang matuto dahil ang usaping pangkalikasan ay para sa lahat at ang pangangalaga nito ay isang kolektibong hangarin. Now, to formally start the program, we invite everyone to join us in the invocation to be led by Engineer Catherine Grace Peña from the College of Engineering and Information Technology, to be followed by the singing of the National Anthem.
Lead me, Lord, lead me by the hand and help me face the rising sun. Comfort me through all the pain that life may bring. There's no other hope that I can lean upon. Lead me, Lord, lead me all my life. Walk by me across the lonely roads that I may face. Take my arms and let your hand show me the way. Show the way to live inside your heart. All my days, all my life, you are my light. You're the lamp upon my feet. All the time, my Lord, I need you there. You are my life. I cannot live alone. Let me stay by your guiding love. I'd rather go along my way. Help me take the right direction. Take your road. Lead me, Lord, and never leave my side. All my days, all my life, you are my life. You're the lamp upon my feet. All the time, my Lord, I need you there. You are my life. I cannot live alone. Let me stay by your guiding love all through my life. Lead me, Lord. You are my light. You're the lamp upon my feet. All the time, my Lord, I need you there. You are my light. I cannot live alone. Let me stay by your guiding love all through my life, all through my days. So lead me, oh Lord. Lead me, Lord. Dear God, thank you for all the blessings you have bestowed upon us. We are truly grateful for them. Thank you for allowing us to have and attend a webinar series that aims to support the month of planet Earth. May you extend your divine wisdom to the speakers so that they would be able to impart effectively their knowledge to all of us. Bless the participants as well so that we would be able to glean the vital knowledge from this activity. May you bestow the blessings after this webinar so that we may spread what we learned in the spirit of your love and generosity that would bring glory to your name. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you po, Ma'am Tenya, for that heartfelt song, and that is our prayer for today, that the Lord will guide us not only in today's webinar, but more importantly as we apply what we will be learning from our speakers this morning, because our love for the Lord is also manifested when we love the earth that He gave us to be our home. Muli magandang umaga po sa bawat isa, at para lalo pang pagandahin ang ating umaga, palakpakan po natin ang isang masipag na dekana na magbibigay sa atin ng isang pambungad na pananalita. To welcome us all, let's all welcome a virtual round of applause for the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Dr. Bettina Joyce P. Ilagan. Good morning po, Dean.
Good morning, Ma'am Lady. Thank you for the introduction.
to all the participants of this webinar series, Istorya, here in the meeting room and those watching in the FB Live. Good morning to all of you and isang mapagpalang umaga. Thank God it's Thursday. For some of us, it's the last day of the work week, but really, work never ends, right? So this morning, it is my honor to welcome all of you to episode 2 of Istorya. So for those who don't know yet, Istorya stands for Impactful Services and Transformative Opportunities in response to the needs of the community and the academe. This activity was initiated, of course, by the University Extension Services, and I would like to congratulate the staff and director of the Extension Services, particularly Director Almira Magkawas, and of course, episode 2, which is Sustainable and Collective Efforts to Address Climate Change, was organized together with the extension coordinators from the College of Arts and Sciences, College of Engineering and Information Technology, College of Agriculture, Food, Environment, and Natural Resources, and the IMUS campus. So to all of you, to all the organizers, congratulations and thank you very much for this another very relevant webinar that you have organized for the community and for the academe. So the topic for today, sustainable and collective efforts to address climate change, is indeed relevant. The past days, we have experienced very hot weather. No? The temperature is high, and we can actually say that with each passing year, temperature gets hotter or the weather gets hotter and hotter. And perhaps for all of us, or for those who say that climate change is real, they are able to say that because of basically that global warming experience. So the earth gets hotter and we experience that. So, and remember, climate change can be attributed both to natural variability or natural causes, but at the same time to human activities. So we, the people, we really play significant roles in addressing and combating this climate change. Mitigation and adaptation to climate change have to happen at the community level. And take note that the way we adjust or the way we address the consequences or the impact of climate change, it has to be a collective effort. So really the significance of the community understanding what climate change is, what causes it, and what are its impact or consequences. Hence, it's very important that we all listen to this webinar. I would like to thank all the speakers, our resource speakers for this morning. Thank you for sharing your generous time with us, for us to be able to understand really how to mitigate the causes and the impact of climate change. And to all the participants, please take advantage of this chance to really learn something from this. If you have questions, do not hesitate to ask our resource speakers because I'm sure they will be very willing to answer those inquiries. And again, finally, I want all of us to get significant insights and lessons from this webinar and challenge ourselves really. How are we going to make these lessons relevant to our lives and at the same time act on these insights and lessons? So again, welcome to this webinar. Enjoy and have a good day. Thank you, Ma'am Lady.
Thank you po, Dean Joyce. Indeed, today's webinar is very relevant kasi this topic does not choose any gender, any age, any race, because all of us who are living on Earth play a significant role in addressing climate change. Katulad nga po ng binanggit ni Dr. Joyce kanina. So today pala, hindi lang hashtag istorya ang ilalagay natin sa ating mga Facebook, kundi hashtag challenge accepted. Kasi lahat tayo ay may role to play. Alright, so sa puntong ito, hihinga naman po natin ng mensahe ang isa pang dedicated na dean mula sa College of Agriculture, Food, Environment, and Natural Resources. Belated happy birthday po. Let's all welcome Dr. Analita D.M. Magsino. Good morning po, ma'am.
Thank you, Miss Lady Eileen. Thank you for the birthday greetings. And good morning, everyone. First of all, I wish to commend the 4 academic units of the university, namely the College of Arts and Sciences, headed by Dean Bettina Joyce P. Ilagan, the College of Engineering and Information Technology, headed by Dr. David L. Cero, the CvSU Imus Campus, headed by Dr. Marlon A. Mojica, and the College of Agriculture, Food, Environment, and Natural Resources through the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science, headed by Dr. Lilibet Pinovicio, for converging with the University Extension Services, headed by Dr. Almira A. Magcawas. We're coming up with the second webinar of Istorya, second episode. Even for their wise decision to give focus on sustainable and collective efforts to address climate change. Secondly, I wish to greet all the extension coordinators, most especially the extension coordinators of the host colleges and campus. And also warm greetings to all our webinar participants. Most importantly, I wish to greet our guest resource person, Sir John Ernest Mateo of CCCP-PSF, and of course, our very own environmental scientists, Dr. Bob Cero and Professor Noel A. Sedigo. Good morning again to everyone. At present, we are in the middle of an intense difficulty brought by COVID-19. COVID-19, as we have all realized, proved to be threat to human survival. The same is true about climate change. Climate change, as we have experienced locally and seen worldwide, also poses a threat to our survival. While COVID-19 affects people's health and the country's healthcare system, climate change is a major challenge to agriculture and food systems. Reports of the FAO, or Food and Agriculture Organization, say that climate change brings a cascade of risks from physical to ecosystems, agroecosystems, agricultural production, food chains, incomes and trade, with economic and social impacts on livelihoods and food security and nutrition. The people who are projected to suffer the earlier due to the worst impacts of climate change are the populations in vulnerable areas. Indeed, climate change seems overwhelming to address. Thus, it continually forms an integral part of overall development agenda of all nations. Our government, the Philippine government for one, since the Aquino administration has been very aggressive in its approach to address the problem of climate change. We have the Climate Change Commission, which coordinates and provides oversight and policy advice on programs and projects on climate change. We have the National Change Action Plan, which serves as the country's roadmap to effectively deal with the problem. We take a strong stand in international negotiations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have the law which created the People's Survival Fund of 1 billion pesos initial special money for climate change adaptation programs and projects in the country. Now, what about Cavite State University? How is the university contributing to such plans and programs of the government? CvSU, let me say, supports the UNESCO's declaration that education is critical in helping populations understand and address the impacts of climate change, and encouraging the changes in attitudes and behavior needed to help them address the causes of climate change, adopt more sustainable lifestyles, and develop skills that support different modules of economies as well as to adapt to the impact of the climate change. The unit forms of startly incorporate climate change topics in the courses that we teach, to capacity building in climate research strategies and approaches, R&D initiatives and collaboration with other government agencies and state universities, to the development and implementation of educational and public awareness programs such as this webinar. This morning's webinar exemplifies CvSU's commitment to share information on the university's sustained and collective efforts on addressing climate change, and also about our intentions to continually collaborate, cooperate, and serve identified stakeholders. May this event give every one of us actionable insights that will lead to impactful engagements with different sectors of communities and academia for the generations to come and for more successful Storia. Good morning, everyone. Again, kudos to everyone who put up this event. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Thank you so much po, Dr. Magsino. And the keywords for today, like what Ma'am emphasized, would be sustainable, collective, and of course, commitment. And syempre, Dr. Magsino also mentioned about collaborating, continuous coordination, and service to the community. And that's exactly what Ugnayan is all about, the University Extension Program, where we all take part, right? But before we take the challenge of becoming part of the solution, I think the first challenge we are taking today is the challenge of listening and listening well sa tatlong istorya na mapakikinggan po natin ngayong umaga. So, sa mga nasa Facebook Live, if you are taking that challenge, pwede bang paki-comment naman dyan, #challenge accepted. So, pag sinabi natin #challenge accepted, we believe you are with us today and you are listening and you are going to take whatever the speakers will impart so that we can all make it a collective effort. And who knows, di ba, meron pa tayong mga makuhang mga tips and suggestions kung paano pa tayo patuloy na makapaglilingkod at makakapangalaga ng kalikasan sa tulong ng bawat isa. So, hindi ko na po patatagalin pa. Allow me to introduce our first resource person or speaker for today. Tubong Ormoc City, Leyte po ang ating unang tagapagsalita. Nag-aral siya bilang NFAC Scholar at nagtapos bilang cum laude at most outstanding student sa programang Agriculture, Major in Soil Science sa Visayas State University, Baybay, Leyte. Nag-aral din siya ng Environmental Science with minor in Development Communication sa University of the Philippines, Los Baños bilang Picard Scholar at ginawaran bilang Most Outstanding Graduate Student. Isa siyang kilalang faculty researcher ng Cavite State University at 1991 pa lamang ay inaaral na niya ang tungkol sa water resources sa Cavite bilang project leader ng watershed research projects that include Labac Alimang, Canas, Pasong Camachile, and Timalan River watersheds as funded by DNR Penro Cavite at ang Surface Water Assessment and Bulk Water Feasibility Project in Maragondon River watershed funded by the Provincial Government of Cavite. Sa kasalukuyan, project leader din po siya ng dalawang sub-project sa Imus River watershed sa ilalim ng Asiano Project ng PAMSEA at Norway kaugnay ng plastic waste pollution. He also worked on various solid waste management studies in Cavite and agriculture-related studies, particularly coffee. Bahagi rin siya ng consultancy projects in environmental carrying capacity assessments and EIA. He has also authored some books and has published some works in environmental studies. At bukod po sa pagiging campus administrator, itinaguya din niya ang karapatan at pribilehiyo ng mga kapwa nating guro nang maglingkod noon bilang faculty regent at former chair of the board of the CvSU Multi-Purpose Credit Cooperative. His most cherished distinction is having championed the protection of water in the province of Cavite for many years now. He is an associate professor and former chair of the Department of Forestry or Food and Environmental Science of CvSU Maine, and former campus administrator of the CvSU T3 campuses, Trece Martires, Tansa and Gen 3's campus. And now with the separation of these 3 campuses, he has been reappointed as the current campus administrator of CvSU Trece Martires City Campus. So shout out po sa mga taga Trece na kasama natin ngayon sa Facebook Live, mga kaistorya, para sa unang paksang pinamagatang Ang Tubig ay Buhay, A Story of Cavite's Water Problem. Palakpakan po natin ang ating unang tagapagsalita sa umagang ito, Associate Professor Noel A. Sedigo. Magandang umaga po, Sir Noel.
Good morning, Eileen. Good morning, everyone. Maraming salamat po. Good morning muna sa lahat ng mga taga-subaybay o taga-sunod sa istorya. Ito po yung pangalawa ng episode. At ngayong umaga nga ay kami ay naimbitahan na sumali sa inyo at magbahagi naman ng aming kwento. Bago po ang lahat, allow me to share my screen para po aking masimulan ang ating kwento ngayong umaga. So, ako nga po si Noel Sedigo at ito nga po ang aking kwento, ang aming kwento. Ako po'y mula sa Department of Forestry and Environmental Science ng College of Agriculture, Food, Environment, and Natural Resources o CAFENR. Ang aming pong kwento ay Ang Tubig ay Buhay or The Story of Water in Cavite. Nais ko po simulan ito sa pagbahagi ng 5 elemento po to make life possible. At yan ang temperature, liquid water, carbon dioxide and oxygen, nutrients, and energy. At mula sa isang farmer ng pinakamahirap ang tubig ng mga bayan ay ang mula sa Iraq, si Qasim Muhammad Muklit, who said, "Where there is water, there is life." So let me begin my story. Ito nga po ang ating bayan, ang probinsya ng Cavite. Nagsimula na 7 ang ating distrito, ngayon po ay 8 na ang legislative district ng ating probinsya. At itong kwento na ito ay tungkol sa ating tubig sa ating bayan, the life-sustaining river systems and groundwater in our province. Itong nakikita nyo, yung mga blue sa mapa, ay ang ating napakaraming rivers sa ating lalawigan. At ito nga po ay aming grinupo at tinawag nating watersheds. So merong 6 na major river watersheds nung grinup namin sila na doon makikita ang bawat river system sa ating lalawigan. So where does our water come from? Ika nga, ito ang kwento namin sa inyo. Ang ating pong tubig ay talaga namang umiikot lamang sa pamamagitan ng hydrologic cycle sa atin sa Cavite. Itong diagram na to ay nagpapakita kung saan ang tubig mula sa dagat ay nag-evaporate at nadadala banda doon sa ating mga kabundukan o yung tinawag nating recharge zone. And in this case, ito po yung Tagaytay area. At kapag pumatak ang ulan, ito po'y papasok sa ating lupa or pwede ding tumakbo sa surface lamang as runoff water. Pero yung mga tubig na nag-infiltrate or pumasok, sila ay pupunta sa ilalim, doon sa rock, sa ilalim ng ating surface na tinatawag nating groundwater. Ito ang representation ng groundwater na aming hinira mula sa USGS sa tinatawag nating aquifer. So sa ilalim daw po ng Cavite ay meron tayong isang aquifer lamang kung saan merong mga cavity or areas na naiipon ang mga tubig ulan. So ito ay tinatawag nating groundwater. Kapag lumabas po ang mga tubig na ito ang tawag natin ay mga springs. At dito nga po nagsimula or nagmula halos lahat ng ating mga ilog. So mula sa upland, umaagos po ang ating tubig papuntang dagat. Ito ay isang pag-aaral mula kay Dr. Guillermo Tabios III sa UP. Pinakita po niya ang ating 10,000 to 11,000 years old lamang na groundwater sa Cavite or aquifer ng Cavite. Batang-bata pa sa geologic time. So ito po'y made of Taal tuff mula sa Bulkang Taal and recent alluvium na nadideposit. Dito naiipon ang ating groundwater. Alam niyo po ba na ang Cavite ay gumagamit ng 77% mula sa ating groundwater at 23% lamang ang gumagamit sa ating surface water ayon sa aming pag-aaral. At inaral namin ang isa sa ating mga river watersheds, ang Labak Alimang, at napatunayan nga po namin na hindi lahat ng mga bahay or hindi lahat ng mga tao ay nakakabit sa mga serbisyo ng ating local water districts. Only 53.41% lamang ang nakakabitan ng tubig. The rest ay kumukuha pa rin ng tubig mula sa springs, deep wells, and shallow wells at saka direkta mismo sa ilog. Ang atin nga pong demand sa water, kung paano natin siya ginamit sa buong probinsya, ay inaral din namin at lumalabas na 62% pa rin ay napapunta sa agrikultura, 30% lamang ang ginagamit for domestic water, 7% goes to industries, and 1% goes to recreation. Pero alam niyo po ba na lumalaki itong 30% na ito na pangangailangan habang lumalaki din ang demand sa water? Bibigyan ko kayo ng ilang kwento or historical accounts sa Cavite's water problem. Alam niyo ba, ng 1982 ay the first series of Commission JICA studies ay ginawa sa ating probinsya at na-discover nila na 0.5 to 1.5 meters ang ibinagsak ng ating groundwater levels sa ilalim sa ating aquifer. At ito ay subsequently studied pa noong 1991, 1993, 1997, and 2005. At the same ang findings na validate po na bumabagsak nga po ang ating groundwater by 1.5 meters per year. So kung ito ay mula 1982, sa ngayon ay meron na nga po tayong crisis sa tubig. Ito ay inilarawan sa isang clip mula sa report sa SACSI sa GMA kung saan nga ay 1 meter on the average ang bagsak ng ating groundwater every year ayon sa JICA. So lumalabas sa isang pag-aaral ng Provincial Government of Cavite noong 2011 na ganito kalaki ang demand ng water natin ayon sa kwento namin sa inyo kanina. May domestic, may agricultural, may industrial, at may recreational. So lumalabas ang total water demand ngayong 2020 ay 1,929 ayon sa projection. At sa kanilang pag-aaral ay 617 lamang million liters per day ang available na tubig mula sa ating groundwater. So kapag groundwater ang basihan, lumalabas nga po na meron na nga problema sa ating probinsya mula pa noong 2012. Kaya inyo makikita, lahat ng mga bayan na pula, yun po yung wala na halos groundwater na available. Yung bayan naman na may mga green pa, tulad ng Maragondon, Indang at saka Amadeo, ay labis pa ang tubig. At yun namang mga light blue ay katamtaman na lamang at yung dark blue halos eksakto na lang sa pangangailangan nila tulad sa Tagaytay. Inaral nga po namin ni Darwin noong 2015 ang projection sa water needs pa at that time at lumalabas na mas madami pang area sa Cavite or mga bayan na naging pula na nga sa ating mapa mula Maragondon, Ternate hanggang sa lowlands po ng Noveleta, Kawit, Bacoor, Cavite City, Dasmariñas, Gentry, Tansa, and Nahi. So ito na lamang ang mga blue areas sa aming estimate, ang Magallanes, Bailen, Indang, Amadeo, Mendez, at Tagaytay ang merong labis ng tubig. So dito po nangyari noong 2013 ang controversial PTK2 water project sa bayan ng Indang kung saan may isang grupo na tinatawag na SWIN kasama ang mga local religious groups and other organizations na lumaban at naghabla nga sa korte ng writ of kalikasan para hindi makuha ang tubig mula sa Ikloy at magamit sa PTK2 project. Alam nyo ba na itong PTK2 controversy ay yan ang nagtulak ng Cavite State University, particular ang Department of Forest and Environmental Science, na sumali sa forefront ng struggle to protect the water resources of the province. Ano nga ba ang mga pangunahing dahilan bakit humihina ang supply ng ating tubig sa Cavite? Ito ay aming inaral at ito po ang aming problem analysis. Ang pangunahin po talagang dahilan ay ang pagtaas ng population or increasing population. At itong increasing population ay ang pangunahing dulot nito ay maraming land conversions na siya namang mag-result sa reduced vegetative cover ng mga watersheds or ng ating lupa. Kaya pag pumatak si ulan, imbis na ito'y papasok sa ating soil, dahil kung wala ng mga puno, ito'y tatakbo na laang as flood water or runoff water sa surface at nagiging baha sa mababang bahagi ng Cavite. pollution ay dulot din ng maraming tao. Usually, solid waste, liquid waste, pupunta sa ating mga ilog or pupunta sa groundwater na nagresulta ng poor water quality. At pag hindi nga po maganda ang klase ng ating tubig, tayo ay magkakasakit kung ito'y gagamitin, kaya magdi-decrease din ang available water para sa atin. Higit sa lahat, kapag tumaas ang population, more and more houses or subdivisions will be constructed, maraming industriya para may trabaho ang ating mga tao, may commercial centers na dadami, may recreation centers na dadami, at ito po ay magdulot ng mas mataas na demand sa water at again, magdudulot ng decrease ng ating water supply. At higit sa lahat na ito yung tema natin ngayong umaga ay ang phenomenon na tinatawag na climate change. So, ano ang ginagawa namin? Ano ang ginagawa ng Cavite State University para po sa Cavite's increasing population and economy? Ito na nga po ang mga kwento ng aming mga pakikibaka para po protektahan ang ating tubig. Una, tuloy-tuloy po talaga ang increase ng population natin dahil sa in-migration. At by 2025, halos lampas na tayong 5 milyon. Kasalukuyan tayo ay 4.6 million dito sa Cavite. Ito ang pinakamataas na population sa buong Pilipinas. At ang ating nga pong ekonomiya ay nagbago na. Dati, ang agriculture ay napakalaking bahagi sa pagbibigay ng employment sa ating bayan. Ngunit ngayon, 38.21% na po ay wholesale and retail or negosyo. 20.84 ay tungkol sa mga personal services. And hotels and restaurants ay 13.5%, manufacturing ay 7%, construction ay 5%, and so on and so forth. At wala na pong 1% ang ating agriculture. So anong ibig sabihin nito? Dahil nga po nagbago ang ating ekonomiya, nagkakaroon din ng pagbabago ng mga domestic water demand. Ito, ipapakita ko sa inyo. Noong 2012 lamang ito, pinakita ng mga bayan na may pinakamataas na mga water demand ay ang Bacoor City na maraming tao, ang Imus, ang City of Dasmariñas, at ang City of General Trias. Pagdating sa industrial water demand, ganun din, ang number 1 pong pinakamataas ang demand ay ang City of General Trias, sinundan ng Rosario, at sinundan naman ng Silang at ng City of Dasmariñas. Pagdating naman sa recreational water demand, kung sino yung mga golf courses at mga resorts, sila ang pinakamalaki ang pangangailangan. Kaya nanguna ang Carmona, sumunod ang City of Dasmariñas at saka City of General Trias at ang Tagaytay City. Pagdating sa agriculture, yung mga dating agricultural areas, sila din ang may pinakamataas na demand. So ito actually, ang City of General Trias at that time ay mataas pa din ang agricultural demand. Ang Tansa, ganun din, ang City of Dasmariñas at saka ang Imus at saka ang Nay. Dahil dito, sa mataas nga po na demand for water, ay narating nga natin itong kondisyon na ito ngayon na may mga bayan tayo na pula na sa aming mapa, ibig sabihin kinapos na sila ng supply ng water at ilan na lamang po sa upland areas ang meron. On land use and land cover change, alam niyo po ba na ang Cavite ay pang-apat lamang in terms of land area sa buong Calabar Zone? Tayo, ang pinakamaliit ay ang Rizal. Ngunit ang Cavite po ang may pinakamataas na population nung census ng 2015. Tayo ay 3.6 na at meron na pong 2,337 per square kilometer na tao sa atin. At ito'y napakataas po, mangalawa lamang sa Rizal. Kaya kung inyo mapansin, si Rizal at sa Cavite, siya may mga problema pagdating po sa water. Ito ang mapa ng ating Cavite Land Use na ginawa noong 2014. Yung pula na makikita nyo, ayun po yung ating mga sinementong bahagi ng Cavite. Ngayon ay halos nasa 38% na ito. Yung green ay grasslands at yung ating brown ay mixed orchards, mga kapihan, fruit trees, etc. na siyang nagsilbing forest sa atin. At bandang Tagaytay nga at Mount Palaypalay ay meron pang berde pong parte, which is just 7% na lang ng ating land area. Yun yung ating forest ecosystems. Sa NDVI map na ginawa ng ating remote sensing laboratory, ang dark green ay yun pong marami pang land cover, marami pang vegetation cover, at yung pula at saka yellow ay wala na po at kalbo na nga po yung mga area na iyon. On pollution and water quality. Sa pag-aaral ng aming mga eksperto mula sa departamento, lumalabas na napakadumi po ng ating tubig. Inyong makita ang average total coliform dito na ginawa ni Amiel Dale Cero, doon bandang Naik sa Labak Alimang. Ang limit lamang dapat ay 5,000 dapat na makikita natin per 100 ml na tubig. Kaso halos nasa milyon ang readings pagdating sa total coliform. Ano ibig sabihin nito? Lahat na pumupulan na tubig sa mga watersheds na ito, lumalabas ay para na siyang kalidad ng Poso Negro. So kung kayo'y lalangoy sa mga tubig na ito, sila po ay para na ring lumangoy sa Poso Negro. Yun ang aming kwento tungkol dito. Ito ay dulot sa isang crisis pa in the making na tinatawag naming Cavite Waste disposal crisis na inaral namin noon pa din. Ito po'y 2000 hanggang 2015 at matindi nga po ang solid waste hanggang ngayon kahit meron tayong batas. Ito ang pinaka-topic actually ngayon, yung climate change. So ano ang dulot po ng climate change sa ating probinsya? Ang ating province ay according sa aming sa COPEN Classification System sa Philippines ay type 1 ang climate. Very clear, ang dry at wet season. So ang dry season ay yun po yung mga rainy mga araw na pupunti ang ulan at yun naman pong mataas ang rainfall, yun yung ating wet season. At ang ating wet season nga po ay magsisimula lamang sa May, tataas sa June, July, mag-peak sa August at bababa sa November. Tapos mag-dry na ulit sa December hanggang April. So ito, kung inyo makita mula sa pag-aaral ni Agusar at Calderon, na tumataas dito sa baba, actually yung dark blue, tumataas ang amount ng rainfall through the years. Ito'y 50 years data, I think, from Pag-asa. Pero umuunti po ang araw kung saan binabagsak ang ating mga ulan. At ito nga po, ang mapa ng precipitation map sa buong Cavite at makikita natin itong dark blue areas ay doon po binabagsak ang ating mga ulan tuwing uulan. Kaya hindi na makapagtataka na sa Imus for instance or sa Dasman na doon ka manunood ay parang napakainit, ngunit sa bandang Tagaytay or sa Indan ay bumubuhos ang ulan. Alam niyo po ba na na-discover din nila after analyzing mula 1975 hanggang ngayon sa data again ni Calderon ay lumalabas na meron na pong air temperature anomalies at lumalabas na nagbago na nga po ang temperatura at tumaas ang ating minimum temperature, lesser na ang ating cooler days, mas marami ang hotter days sa Cavite. Kaya meron nitong climate alert na pinopost ko sa inyo. Our province is hotter by 0.6 degrees centigrade. We have more hotter days than cooler days. And we have fewer rainy days but more rainfall na siya ding nagdulot ng mga problema sa atin. So anong ginagawa ng aming departamento? Ano pa ang mga approach na ginagamit namin? Ito pong inyong makikita ay ang tinatawag na watershed approach sa problema. Ginagamit po namin ang pag-aaral using our river systems para mapag-aralan ang problema sa tubig. Maganda po ang watershed kasi makikita po ninyo kung meron pong mga nakatira sa itaas ay hindi ibig sabihin na ang kanilang ginagawa ay hindi makaapekto sa baba. Kaya po watershed ang ginagamit para ipakita na ang ating activity ng bawat isa ay nakakaapekto sa lahat ng mga bayan na nasa loob nitong watershed na to. At ang framework po na ginagamit namin, pag-aralan ng watershed, ang biophysical, ang socio-economic characteristics niya, gagawa ng vulnerability assessment ng watershed at mag-produce ng integrated watershed management plan para sa watershed. In 2012, ang CvSU po ay nagtayo ng GIS and remote sensing laboratory para palakasin ang ating kapasidad for research. At meron na nga po kaming 4 major tools ngayon na ginagamit para sa ating mga research: ang remote sensing and geographic information system, ang field surveys, and focus group discussions and SWOT analysis, and a lot of secondary data para po magawa natin ang mga research na ito. Mula noon po, noong 2015, ang CvSU ay nag-force ng very close coordination with local government units, PEMC, DNR, Provincial Government of Cavite, at maraming schools, NGOs, people's organizations, and even religious groups para nga po labanan itong problema sa tubig at protektahan ang ating mga water system. Marami pong pag-uusap, maraming plano ang nagaganap. Patuloy po, even up to now, or up to today, ang mga pag-uusap na ito. Noon pong 2015 ay ginanap din ang kauna-unahang First Cavite Water Summit na ating ini-sponsoran ng Cavite State University at kasama nga po natin dito ang Provincial Government of Cavite at PEMC at lumagda na isang tripartite na kasunduan para kami ay tayo magsama-sama para po sa ating tubig. Itinayo din po ang Integrated Information Management System or database sa Cavite State University sa CAFENR upang magsilbing ipunan ng lahat ng mga information o data patungkol sa tubig. In 2018, tayo mapalad na naging miyembro ng PEMC Network of Learning Centers sa East Asia para mabuksan ang CvSU sa ibang bansa naman sa Asia at matuto tayo din sa kanila at sila din ay makapag-exchange sa atin ng mga faculty and mga students sa mga pag-aaral tungkol sa water. So ano ang mga recommendations on the problem of increasing population? Alam niyo naman ang usaping populasyon ay napakahirap. Our recommendations, number 1, Cavite must slow down or stop accepting resettled families or settlers from Metro Manila, informal settlers. Number 2, Cavite must stop the establishment of more subdivisions. Number 3, the government must implement massive population education programs. And number 4, kung talagang malaki ang pangangailangan sa housing, we must utilize vertical development in order to slow down on land conversions. On land conversions nga, ay merong napakagandang balita. In 2018, batay po sa ating pag-aaral at rekomendasyon sa panlalawigan, the board of the council, Panlalawigan Council ng Cavite, Provincial Council ng Cavite, ay nagpasa ng resolusyon declaring a 10 years moratorium on land conversions and reclassification in the recharge areas. Ito nga pong blue na mga na color sa mapa, itong mga bayan na to, ay itinigil muna pansamantala for 10 years. Ang lahat po pag-convert dito into industries o kaya subdivisions and other forms of development para mabigyan ng tsansa na ayusin muna natin or atin munang pahingahin ang ating lupa, hindi muna mag-change yung ating land cover at makagawa kami ng paraan na makapagtanim pa ng mga puno para maprotektahan ang ating water resource. On pollution and water quality, umiikot po halos kami for ilang years sa Cavite giving seminars on solid waste management in Cavite at kasama po namin on trainings on solid waste management ang atin pong CvSU Extension Services. In 2018 nga po itinayo ang Provincial Water Testing Laboratory dito sa atin mismo sa Cavite State University para ma-monitor natin ang quality ng water sa ating lalawigan. Itinayo din po ang Water Quality Management Area Project together with the EMB para po sa Imus Ilang-Ilang and Cañas River watersheds. At ang CvSU ay member nga po sa Quality Management Area Governing Board na nangangasiwa sa protection at management po ng dalawang watersheds na ito. Ang usaping climate change ay napakahirap. Tanging ang Cavite Greening Program or ang pagtatanim lamang ang amin talagang ginagawa ngayon in the last few years. Ang purpose po nito ay para po bibigyan ng panahon, binigyan kami ng 10 years ng probinsya para magtanim ng mas maraming puno at ito nga po ay aming minamapa para sigurado tayo na maitanim natin properly at mababalikan kung nabubuhay ito. Yung mga green po na mga dots, ayun po yung mga tree planting sites na amin na pong nagawa in the last 3 years. At ngayon po ay lumipat na kami, nasa Cañas na po ang pagtatanim ng mga puno. So ito ang mga kasamahan natin, kasamahan ng tatanim kahit saang sulok ng Cavite, kasama namin sila, ang police, ang mga fire brigades, LGUs, and even schools and our students mula environmental science in Cavite State University. On increasing water demand, meron pa nga po ba talaga tayong magawa para dito? Tanging ang nasambit ko na lamang ay we need to educate our people on how to use our water properly and how to conserve it. Education pa din is the key. We also need to regulate the construction of private deep wells that extract water directly from groundwater. At wala itong mga permits. Kaya po nilagay ko dito, there is no comprehensive study pa to show how many people talaga have private deep wells in their homes. On alternative surface water sources, Ito po ay aming pinag-usapan kasama ang probinsya, kasama si Gov. John Vic. At ang aming mga diskusyon ay tumututok sa alternative water sources at ito ang aming naging conclusion earlier. Getting water from Laguna Lake or from Taal Lake or doing desalination of seawater from Manila Bay for domestic use is very expensive para sa Cavite. So ang tangi pong alternative ay babalik tayo sa ating mga watersheds, titingnan ang ating mga ilog at gagamit na nga po ng ng surface water. Ito po ang 6 na mga watersheds na kasalukuyang actually na-aral na namin at atin na nga pong tinutukoy alin sa ating mga watersheds ang pwedeng gamitin as bulk water para po sa probinsya ng Cavite. Kaya binigyan kami ng pondo mula sa Provincial Government of Cavite to look for feasible bulk water sources. At ilan nga po sa aming inaral, 3 ang nag-stand out. Maragondon River Watershed, Cañas River Watershed at Labac Alibang Watershed. Ngunit sa lahat po ay ang Maragondon River Watershed ay nagpakita ng pinakamalaking potential. So nagkaroon kami ng mga stream water measurements in Maragondon River Watershed at ito nga po ang mapa natin sa Maragondon at yung 4 na dots, ayun po yung mga sampling points na ginawa namin. At ating pong tiningnan ang mga ilog, sinukat, mineasure, minapa, Daini Upstream 2, Ikloy Daini Convergence, Bailen, tiningnan din ang ilog ng Bailen, tiningnan din po ang convergence nila nung 2 ilog na yon. At tiningnan nga po ang Maragondon at Maragondon Upstream 1 and 2 and finally ang Maragondon Convergence. So base po sa mga pag-aaral dito ay nakakuha po kami ng ito na po ang summary ng stream flow measurements na nakita namin sa Maragondon. At amin nga pong nakita na during sa wet season ay halos meron tayong 42,618 million liters per day na makukuha mula sa Maragondon. Ngunit kapag dry season, babagsak nga po ito sa 16,449 million liters per day. Malaki po ang diferensya. Inaral din po ang water quality ng Maragondon River at lumalabas na siya ang pinakamagandang kalidad base sa lahat ng mga watersheds na naaral. So sa balikan namin ang projected water demand, lumalabas po na ang nakita nating tubig sa dry season at wet season mula sa Maragondon River watershed ay tamang-tama sa mga pangangailangan natin sa susunod na mga years to come. Kaya sa aming konklusyon, ang Maragondon River can supply the highest amount of water na 60,000 million liters per day during wet season and 23,449.94 million liters per day during the dry season. Ngunit hindi pwedeng gamitin 100% ang tubig sa ilog. So if we utilize 70% of surface water, we would have a supply of 16,000 million liters per day during dry season and 42,680 million liters per day during the wet season. At ito nga pong sa surface water supply sa Maragondon ay pwede nating gamitin ng lahat ng mga sektor up to 2040. And a bulk water project in Maragondon River needs to be treated dahil meron din pong mga kaunting duming nakikita kami sa tubig. At dito nga po nagtatapos ang aking kwento at bago nga tuluyang matapos ito, let me end this with a quotation from Thomas Fuller that we will never know the worth of our water till the well is dry. So ako po si Noel Sedigo at ito po ang kwento ng Department of Forestry and Environmental Science mula sa College of Agriculture, Food, Environment, and Natural Resources. Magandang umaga at maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Sir Noel. Grabe. Talagang napaka-valuable ng accurate information and research outputs. Hindi tayo pwedeng ma-fake news pagdating sa environment kasi napakahalagang usapin talaga ng climate change. So some of the insights na nakuha ko po mula sa inyong presentation, and we also encourage yung mga kasama natin 252 participants on Facebook to type down your insights, what you learned today. Kasi ako personally, dun pa lang sa nabanggit niyo po na statement na where there is water, there is life. Diba? Totoong tubig ay buhay. And to fight for our water, indeed, education is the key. And we are starting today through this webinar. At sa edukasyon na yun, natutunan natin yung mga terms, di ba? Aquifer, groundwater, springs. Pero siguro, Sir Noel, ang favorite ko yung sa mga mapa. Kasi dati mga mapa lang ni Dora yung napapanood natin. But today, we realize how valuable these maps are. And the colors will never be the same, di ba? Alam na natin na, nasa red kami, nasa green kami. So these are the things na we have to keep in mind so we can better understand kahit wala tayo dun sa field na environmental science. Kasi part pa rin tayo ng pangangalaga ng ating tubig dito sa Cavite. And syempre po, one very admirable point that Sir Noel gave us is how the Department of Forestry and Environmental Science at CAFENR address these things and how they participate collaboratively with other partners sa community, yung mula doon sa research, instruction, extension continuum. Na hindi lang tayo nagtuturo, hindi lang tayo nag-aaral, bagkus, syempre nananaliksik din tayo para higit pang matuto ang iba at makatulong sa paglilingkod at makibahagi sa sabi nga ni Sir Noel kanina ay pakikibaka upang protektahan ng tubig. And he also mentioned about the factors affecting why we have this water crisis and that waste disposal crisis. That is #climate alert para sa bawat isa sa atin. And siguro one thing I realized dahil yung population talaga is napakalaking factor. #family planning matters po talaga hindi lang para sa personal resources natin sa tahanan, but it really affects how we value and how we live our lives today. Yung reduced vegetative cover, yung ating mga land conversion challenges ngayon, and of course pollution, which leads to poor water quality at mga sakit. Diba, na ayaw natin na yung tubig na nagbibigay buhay ay isang tubig na papatay dahil din sa ating kapabayaan sa kalikasan. So, syempre, ang
pagdating sa environment, ang ganda ng lahat.
Salamat po, sir. And syempre po yung pagtatanim, mga plantito-plantita, hindi lang sa loob ng bahay, kundi pati sa pagbabalik ng ating mga kabundukan. Muli, marami pong salamat. Sir Noel, round of applause. Yan, we are seeing a lot of insights here po on Facebook. And before I proceed to the second speaker, I would just like to shout out sa dalawa po sa mga engaged natin na participant dito sa Facebook. Sabi ni Ma'am Arlene Estrada, the more that we have to practice proper waste disposal, planting trees, and conserving water. #challenge accepted talaga. And sabi naman po ni Ma'am Melly from KMC, Sir Noel, that was a very comprehensive istorya. Education is the key talaga because many people do not know water conservation and use. Maraming walang pakialam, and that's a sad story. That was a very educational story for all. Muli, marami pong salamat. And now let's proceed to our second speaker for this morning to continue this storytelling about climate change and our response to it. Ang ikalawa po nating tagapagsalita ay nagtapos ng kursong Bachelor of Arts Major in Development Studies sa De La Salle University. Bukod sa pagdalo sa mga pagsasanay kagaya ng Enhanced Local Climate Change Action Plan training for Yolanda Corridor LGUs sa Leyte noong 2019, nagsilbi rin siyang research assistant sa Philstrat-based consultancy noong 2018, publications officer ng Yuchenko Center noong 2019, at kasalukuyan siya naglilingkod bilang development management officer ng Philippine Climate Change Commission at katuwang sa pagbibigay ng technical support sa mga proposal para sa People's Survival Fund, Green Climate Fund, at sa ilang gawaing kaugnay ng climate finance systems and services. Para sa ikalawang paksang pinamagatang People's Survival Fund, a financial grant for climate change adaptation project, a virtual round of applause for our next speaker, Mr. John, Ernest, and Mateo. Good morning po, Sir Ernest.
Good morning to ma'am. Maraming salamat for that very generous introduction. So, magandang umaga rin po sa ating mga...
Excuse me po, Sir Ernest, medyo mahina po yata yung ating audio. So if we can move closer po. Salamat po.
Ayan, sige. Pasensya na po for that slight technical issue. So, muli maraming salamat po for that very generous introduction, ma'am. Magandang umaga po sa ating mga katuwang at kasama sa ating webinar for this morning, to our participants of meeting room and our participants din sa ating Facebook live stream. So, good morning po ulit. So, this morning, on behalf of the Climate Change Commission's People's Survival Fund Unit, it's actually an honor for me to present. And it's actually a good opportunity din po na maibahagi sa Cavite State University bilang isa itong higher education institution. We take high regard po sa ating mga higher education institutions na partners po, kinoconsider po natin as partners and stakeholders po sa ating mga proponents na nais po i-access itong People's Survival Fund. So allow me po to share my screen for a while. So here po, ayan. So the People's Survival Fund is amended, or this from the Republic Act 10174, the People's Survival Fund Law of 2012 was enacted. This also amended yung Republic Act 9729, which enabled po yung pag-establish or creation ng ating Climate Change Commission. So the Climate Change Commission is the government agency mandated to coordinate climate change actions and programs both in the national and local level. So brief overview or background there po, no? People's Survival Fund was enacted in 2012 to provide a long-stream finance for adaptation projects aimed at increasing resiliency of communities and ecosystems to climate change. So yung utilization of PSF dwells more on climate change adaptation projects, although it also welcomes yung pag-propose po or pagpapresenta natin ng mga mitigation projects, considering that they are also recognized as a co-benefit to adaptation. So every year, actually, ang maganda dito sa PSF, this is actually first of its kind in the Southeast Asian region. Dito natin nakikita kung gaano ka-advance ang ating bansa, the Pilipinas, sa pagpupursue ng mga policies and regulations towards climate action. So this climate finance facility, People's Survival Fund, has an annual allocation of at least 1 billion pesos. Doon po sa ating national budget na pinapasa ng ating Kongreso at ating gobyerno every year, meron pong ina-allocate ng 1 billion pesos to finance yung People's Survival Fund, which may be accessed by our local government units and local or community organizations. So PSF may also be augmented by donations, endowments, grants, and contributions. So yung nature ng ating fund, the PSF, is supplementary siya sa mga annual appropriations na ini-implement or pinapatupad ng ating mga government agencies for climate change-related programs and projects for LGUs. So dapat sinasagot ito yung mga katanungan kung meron na bang existing na funding appropriations for programs or projects, meron bang parallel funding na involved, at dapat ay sumasangguni ito sa pag-address ng mga impact natin on climate change sa different sectors. So if meron isang LG or proponent na gusto mag-pursue ng isang climate change adaptation project, kailangan ay maisagot or maging correspondent yung mga katanungan na ito. Isa ito sa mga dapat nila i-consider sa pag-propose ng mga projects for PSF. So yun nga po, as also by virtue ng ating Republic Act 10174, yung PSF is managed by a board which is chaired by the Department of Finance with members comprised of various sectoral or stakeholders. So yun nga, dito natin nakikita na very holistic yung pag-operationalize or yung pag-allocate ng pondo. So we have there the CCC, the DBM, NEDA, DILG, the Philippine Commission on Women, which takes into consideration yung mga gender safeguards ng mga project proposals. And also we have academe and representatives from the academe and scientific community, private business sector, and from non-government organizations. So the PSF board is also assisted or supported by the PSF board secretariat. Currently, ito po ang PSF board secretariat is naka-lodge sa Department of Finance. So sa overall based nga rin sa stipulated din sa Republic Act 10174, may malaking role na pina-perform ang Climate Change Commission sa pag-operationalize ng PSF. So unang-una sa lahat, ang CCC ang nag-undertake ng review and evaluation of project proposals, which eventually is i-endorse ng mga climate change commissioners to the PSF board for approval. Also, CCC is one of the agencies tasked to develop accreditation guidelines for local or community organizations. Bilang ang LCOs po ay isa rin sa mga eligible proponents on top of LGUs who may access this fund. Likewise, CCC is also the one leading the promotion of PSF through conducts of capacity building activities and provision of technical assistance to LGUs and LCOs. So later on po in this presentation, I will also discuss further kung ano po yung mga technical assistance services we offer which may also be availed by higher education institutions in accessing the PSF or in supporting LGUs or LCOs in accessing the PSF. So bilang meron nga tayong 1 billion allocation sa PSF based from our National General Appropriations Act or the national budget. So we also take into consideration that through time, given the number of proposals that will be approved eventually by the PSF board, baka hindi maging sufficient yung pondo na naka-allocate for PSF. So in terms of the disbursement of the fund, we have implemented, or the PSF board has set in place a prioritization criteria for the disbursement of fund for those projects that has been approved. So we take into consideration factors such as presence of multiple hazards, poverty incidents, and presence of key biodiversity areas. So also since we also take into consideration local or community organizations as eligible proponents to the fund. So these are some of the criteria we have set in place for them to be considered as a legitimate local or community organization. So as mentioned a while ago, actually po yung isa sa mga frequent stakeholders who intend to access the PSF. So ano nga ba yung proseso na dinadaanan ng mga project proposals before ma-approve at alongside yung sa pag-disburse na mismo ng mga pondo. First, we have the call for proposals, which is issued by the PSF Board Secretariat. Ideally, this is done twice a year, but since currently we are operating during the COVID-19 pandemic, we are still working on the implementation for the call for proposals for this year. And after that, the call for proposals shall trigger yung submission of proposals ng ating mga LGUs at LCOs na proponents. After that, meron tayong review and evaluations, which are comprised of 2 layers. So first is yung pre-assessment, yung completeness of documentary requirements will be checked upon. At the same time, yung technical review and evaluation of the project proposal. And after that, if deemed acceptable on that level, yung ating project proposal, it will undergo yung ating field appraisal naman, which wherein yung mga target project areas, project sites natin will be visited by our evaluation team. So this review and evaluation process is undertaken by CCC with the help from the National Panel of Technical Experts, our senior technical advisors, and other representatives from our PSF board member agencies. So if deemed acceptable from that level po yung ating project proposal, it shall be transferred or submitted to the commissioners of the Climate Change Commission for the current concurrence and endorsement. And after that, it should be turned over to the PSF board for the final approval of the project. So once approved na yung project, so there goes na yung more administrative types of activities in the process flow. So there's a negotiation of financial agreements on this. And after that, after the fund disbursement, meron evaluation, then afterwards, project sustainability and impact analysis for after 5 years since the completion of the project. So here, another part of the frequently asked questions, ano nga ba yung mga kailangan i-submit ng mga proponents natin in expressing interest to access the PSF. So first and foremost is the letter of intent to be signed or endorsed by our local chief executive. Then we have our accomplished PSF project proposal template with detailed work and financial plan, our annual investment plan of our locality, and any adaptation references available at hand. So very important na since yung ating evaluation process takes into consideration science and evidence basis. So it is actually crucial that we present our project proposals with backup from these reference documents available at hand in our locality. So same goes with our local or community organizations. These are also part of our documentary requirements. So actually, since PSF is targeting towards vulnerable communities and localities, those who intend to pursue their adaptation measures from those level, we also take into consideration, or we also acknowledge the notion that these communities or localities have limited technical capacity in developing a quality and science and evidence-based project proposal. So meron silang limitations, and it might take them quite some time for them to complete a full-blown project proposal. So the PSF board also implemented in 2019 its project development grant. But this is a sub-financial window wherein 2 million pesos per LGU may be allocated for the implementation of pre-project preparation activities such as yung pag-prepare ng ating mga risk and vulnerability studies, pre-feasibility studies, cost-benefit analysis as such. So this is made accessible for municipalities with second-level income class and below. So ito yung huge chunk of the types of programs or projects activities which may be funded by the PSF. So while more importantly, this is not the types of projects, programs, or activities that may be presented for PSF are actually not limited to these types of sectoral activities. First and foremost, adaptation activities on water, land resource management, agriculture and fisheries, infrastructure development, and natural ecosystems, yung pag-install and procurement of forecasting and early warning systems, monitoring and controlling of vector-borne diseases, institutional development for preventive measures, planning, preparedness, and management for climate change, establishment and strengthening of regional centers and information networks, and yung pag-provide din natin ng mga risk insurance needs for farmers and agricultural workers. More importantly, given that list has been identified in the Republic Act 10174, what's more important is yung mga project proposals na ating i-represent for PSF must be abided or must correspond to the 7 thematic areas in our National Climate Change Action Plan. So these, we have in our PSF project proposal template, makikita natin later on na yung meron tayong kailangan identify ng mga project focus areas which are anchored towards these thematic areas in our NCCAP. On top of that, what's more important is that ating project proposals are corresponding and are puts into reference dun sa mga data and analytics natin, climate change projections, existing vulnerabilities existent in our locality, which are also indicated in our local climate change action plan. So other reminders in the access of the funds, so local government units can apply for both hard and soft projects. So, and then for local or community organizations are only limited for soft projects. So when we say hard projects, these are infrastructure, forestry, agroforestry, planting activities, and for soft projects, these are leaning towards research, institutional development, and capacity building. So then bullet 3, so this is where the role of our state universities and colleges and HEIs comes into place. So other stakeholders are encouraged to be implementing partners for the proposal of the LGUs and LCOs, since we also we take importance in the roles of these institutions who can provide technical support and capacity to our eligible proponents in further developing and enhancing their project proposals. Lastly, there is a counterpart funding allocated at least 10% on the total project cost to be shouldered by the proponent. These may be in cash or in kind. So important considerations in developing a project climate change adaptation proposal. So again, we take into emphasis that it should be both science and evidence-based and not business as usual. It should be supportive or part of existing development plans and frameworks, be it on the national and local level. It should ensure non-duplication of the budget from our General Appropriations Act, given that supplementary nga yung nature ng ating fund. Multi-stakeholder partnerships are encouraged, which is why we encourage proponents to identify implementing partners during project development and implementation phases. And mix of structural or non-structural activities are encouraged in order to implement a holistic and more adaptation-based measures. And also it should be gender responsive, sustainable, and replicable in scale. So actually, as of date, we have 6 approved projects which are currently in their implementation phases, which has been approved by the PSF board. So we have one from Herona Tarlac, we have one which is from Luzon, one from Visayas, San Francisco Camotes Island, Cebu, and 4 from Mindanao, Del Carmen, Surigao del Norte, Lanuza, Surigao del Sur, Kitchener, Agusan del Norte, and one provincial project from the province of Sarangani. So this is the first PSF approved project from the municipality of Del Carmen, Surigao del Norte, entitled Siargao Climate Change Field School for Farmers and Fisher Folk. So this is an 80 million project in partnership with the Surigao State College of Technology. So dito natin makikita yung importance ng participation or engagement ng mga higher education institutions for the implementation of adaptation measures from the PSF. So eventually, yung LGU, nakikita nila na on the long run, it's better that yung project is being sustained and implemented by the HEI. So this climate field school, yung target nila is to capacitate fisher folk and farm owners in capacitating and providing knowledge transfer towards climate change responsive and climate smart practices on agriculture and fisheries. So it also aims to establish yung end-to-end institutional system for locally tailored climate information tools. Next is the approved project from the municipality of Lanuza, Surigao del Sur, entitled Disaster Risk Reduction and Management as an Adaptation Mechanism to Resiliency. So this is a 40 million project which is from the 4th class municipality. So actually one of the misconceptions regarding the PSF is that it's mahirap daw i-access yung fund. But as we can see, this approved project is one of the indicators that regardless of what income class or level our locality is, there is a high chance or opportunity that ma-approve yung ating project, provided that these are guided by climate and science and evidence basis. So the project components of this is management and rehabilitation of watersheds, protection and propagation of mangrove ecosystems along the riverine, enrichment of the forest cover, and the provision of alternative livelihood and market enrichment. For the Visayas, this is our approved project, building resilience through ecological-based farming. This one is a project with implementing partner from a local organization, the Philippine Partnership for Development of Human Resources in Rural Areas, or PHILDRA. So this project aims to strengthen water governance for climate adaptive livelihoods for agriculture. And one of the intended outcomes of this project is yung pag-establish ng water resources development management to engage more water service providers in order to strengthen or enhance yung quality and yung volume of water supply in the locality. For the municipality of Herona Tarlac, this is the project entitled Promoting Resiliency and Climate-Informed Herona. This is in partnership with the Rice Watch and Action Network. So ongoing pa rin po yung implementation ng project na ito. So this one aims to increase yung access of communities to climate information and warning services. So specifically tailored to the locality, yung climate information na kanila makukuha in supplementary to that of Pag-asas. And at the same time, they're also working on the research of the feasibility of earth domes as climate responsive infrastructure for residential settlements. For Kicharao, Agusan del Norte, this is the project entitled Establishment and Sustainable Management of River Ecosystem in Kicharao. So this is a 28.7 million project in partnership with the Agri-Aqua Development Corporation Mindanao. So dito natin makikita na kung this is actually one of the tangible examples of PSF being a suppletory fund. So yung fund na na-approve for this is ginamit na LGU dun sa pag-allocate ng existing components as an offshoot of DPWH sa kanilang locality and further increasing yung kanilang adaptive capacity towards risks brought about by flooding and landslides. And then this is actually our biggest project to date, one that is proposed on the provincial level. So this is a watershed ecosystem rehabilitation and flood risk reduction for increased resilience. So this is 104 million peso project, wherein yung main implementation of it is done in the municipality of Maitum, Sarangani. So one of the targets of this project is yung pag-formulate ng Saub Watershed Management Plan and pag-capacitate ng LGUs and development of agroforestry in the upland and establishment of GMO farms and the pag-construct ng riverbank protection for to avoid river siltation and to regulate flood water. So over the years, in compliance to its mandate, the CCC has been providing various initiatives to further enhance or to further support our eligible proponents and our stakeholders in accessing the PSF. So we have seen quite a volume of demand and interests from LGUs and LCOs in accessing the fund. So we have also, due to that, we have implemented various initiatives to further support these eligible proponents. So first, we have our PSF e-learning program. So this is actually a 12-week online course. This is open for local government units, local or community organizations, members of the academe, and national government agencies. So dito natin makikita na despite limitations on training our technical officers on the ground sa pag-develop ng kanilang project proposals, we make it available or we try to expand our reach as much as possible to capacitate these stakeholders in order to provide their or to enhance their project proposals. So through within the end of this 12-week online course, yung ating mga expected deliverables from this program is a draft project proposal, which may be later on developed into a full-blown project proposal. Also, we have the PSF one-on-one mentoring sessions. We provide this specific technical assistance service for those LGUs or LCOs who have draft project proposals at hand, but they intend to enhance it further and develop it into a full-blown PSF project proposal, which may be deemed unique. This is a series of technical capacity programs wherein actually we have transformed this into a virtual type of capacity building initiative wherein we try to capacitate more our stakeholders on what types of projects or programs may be submitted for the PSF. Lastly, we have the PSF monitoring and evaluation system. We're currently in the phase of finalizing this system or platform. Eventually, this shall allow yung pag-submit ng mga project logistical issues or concerns ng ating mga proponents in submitting their PSF project proposals if we retain or if we refer to the traditional practice of transmitting project proposals. So this also somehow decreases yung issues of delays sa pag-review ng mga project proposals natin. So lastly, so if we have more if we have more clarifications or we intend to know more about this program, our bit.ly/accessing PSF materials. Likewise, lahat po na ating mga IEC material Google Drive folder. So thank you po. So if you have questions po, then also to visit our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/People Survival Fund. At the same time, if you have further queries in developing a project proposal, you may also likewise send us an email through psf@climate.gov.ph. So thank you very much. Hope this was an insightful presentation to all of us po. And good morning again. Thank you po.
Thank you so much po, Sir Ernest. Virtual round of applause for our second speaker. Indeed, it's a very insightful one po, sir. Thank you for walking us through the process, the requirements we need to submit, the criteria, the types of programs and projects, and the examples, of course. And more importantly, the motivation, sir. Kasi dun po sa inyong presentation, nakita natin na let's not think about money as a problem kasi may funding agencies, may grants, na pwede nating applyan when we want to work on a climate change adaptation project like PSF. Basta kailangan, huwag kakalimutan yung other considerations like dapat gender sensitive or gender responsive, sustainable, replicable. Kaya naman po sa mga participant natin sa Facebook, 216 participants, alam ko po may tanong kayo kay sir. Kanina nagbabasa ako sa comments and some participants, like mga magkakaibigan ng mga researcher, ay talaga naman po na-excite. Sabi po nung isa, ito na yun, funding opportunity. Sabi naman ni Ma'am Leia Domingo, ayan na friend, ang mga areas for research. Yan, di ba? So talagang napakaganda nitong kwentuhan natin kasi nasi-stir up yung ating mga ideas. Kaya alam ko po sa mga may naiisip dyan na ipopropose na hard and soft projects under People Survival Fund, you may type your questions if you have or any clarification for Sir Ernest, and we will address them later during our open forum after our third speaker. Basta tandaan, this must be aligned with the National Climate Change Action Plan kasi we are addressing climate change as a problem as one nation, right? And eventually, of course, as one big international community. So muli, marami pong salamat Sir Ernest, and we'll see you again later for our open forum. Now it's time for the last but definitely not the least speaker because sabi nga, sa bawat pagdanas, may pagkatuto. Kaya naman ang ating third speaker will be sharing with us his experience on a climate change related project. Siya po ay nagtapos ng BS Agricultural Engineering, MS Agrometeorology at PhD in Environmental Science mula sa University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Laguna. His integrity as a scholar is proven as he was entrusted with various grants like the Agricultural and Rural Development Scholarship Grant, Cavite State University Faculty and Staff Development Scholarship Grant, and the DA Bar PhD Dissertation Grant. Bahagi din siya ng Philippine Society of Agricultural and Biosystems Engineers, Philippine Association for the Advancement of Science and Technology, Philippines Network of Educators on Environment or PNEE, Philippine Association of Agriculture Educators Incorporated at Philippine Environmental Association, right? So aside from attending various trainings and seminars, his life as a researcher is evident in a number of research projects he conducted, led, presented, and eventually some of them are published. Some of them include water, resource inventory and assessment of Labac River Basin of Cavite, enhancing the climate change adaptation capacity of local government units and scientists in the Philippines, climate change assessment, adaptation and mitigation project for coffee growers in the Philippines, S&T-based soil, nutrient, and water management of coffee in the Philippines, water resource inventory and assessment of Labac Water Basin, and climate risk and vulnerability assessment for Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, and Rizal provinces. He is a certified internal quality auditor, AACUP accreditor, DOST cleaner production assessor, EIA preparer, and professional agricultural and biosystems engineer, and of course, an ASEAN engineer from Cavite State University. He has served the university since 1994, a former director of the Physical Plant Services, and currently the Dean of the College of Engineering and Information Technology. So kaway-kaway sa mga taga-CIT for the topic Climate Change Related Project and Experience. Let's all welcome Engineer David L. Cero. Good morning po, sir. Nakamute pa po kayo, sir.
Thank you, lady. Thank you very much for that very generous introduction. Unang-una, pasasalamat at pagbati sa bumubuo ng Cavite State University Extension Services, kasama ang ating mga extension coordinators sa paglunsad ng iba't ibang istorya ng pakikibaka at malasakit. Isang karangalan na maging bahagi ng inyong kwento, yung episode 2 natin ngayon, yung Climate Change Edition. Bagamat kumikita na at nag-viral pa nga, ang mga katagang wala naman kayong ginagawa research lang kayo ng research. Pero isang kwentong research pa rin ang aking ibabahagi ngayong umaga. At hindi lang research, napapanahon pa ito dahil nga may kaugnayan ito sa ating nagbabagong panahon o climate change. Yes, hindi na ito bagong topic sa atin because it has been with us since 1990s, pero still isa pa rin siyang pressing concern. We are somehow in a worse situation now than before. In fact, some consider that we are facing a climate crisis or even a climate emergency. And we need to act fast and decisively address some of our concerns, particularly if we are dealing with the basic need of our 110 million Filipinos, that is food. And ang kwento ko ngayong umaga ay may kaugnayan nga sa ating tinatawag na food security. At salamat sa ating agricultural sector, particularly ang mga farmers, dahil kwento nila ang ibabahagi ko ngayong umaga na ito. Allow me first to share my screen habang ikinukwento ko din yung ambag ng CvSU sa ating food security initiatives. Ang ibabahagi ko ngayong umaga sa atin, kita na ba yung screen ko, ma'am?
Yes po, sir. Ayan pa, okay na po.
So thank you very much. So what I would like to share to you this morning is one of the research projects that we are currently conducting. Or officially, it will end this April. So very fresh pa sa atin ito. And in fact, I'm happy to note that one of the projects that can be supported by our PSF is along this line. I'm talking about climate risk and vulnerability assessment. In this particular case, we are dealing with 4 provinces, the Cavite, Laguna, Batangas, and Rizal provinces. Just a little background or kwento also about this project. This project is a component of AMIA. AMIA stands for Adaptation and Mitigation Initiatives in Agriculture. This is a big program rolled out by the Department of Agriculture way back 2016. Which aims to assess exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity to climate, agri-fishery sector, plan and design climate risk responsive and development interventions. So this AMIA program of the DA was implemented by the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, piloted in 16 provinces. So during the initial rollout for the 16 provinces, the Calabar zone only one province in the Calabarzon was included. That is Quezon. That's why you will note that in our project title, we are dealing only with the remaining 4 provinces in the Calabarzon area. So the next phase for this AMIA program is to include the 65 remaining provinces. But before the involvement of Cavite State University in this project, there was an initial talk with the DA Regional Field Office for a Calabarzon way back 2019, because the money that the funding for this particular component of AMIA is will be reverted back if they will it will not be used by that time. So DA4A and Cavite State University agreed to collaborate with Cavite State University implementing the project covering the 4 provinces in the Calabarzon area. So it was initially a 6-month project for the 4 provinces. So you just imagine how busy we were in preparing the necessary documentary requirements for the project to be approved. So we started this project way back November 2019. But after several months, we experienced our pandemic, and that's why this project is still live up to this point, officially until the end of this month. Okay, so I would like to introduce the members of our Cavite State University CRB team. So yours truly is the project leader. We also have Dr. Analita Magsino as part of our team, Ma'am Joanne Ducan, Amiel Del Cero, and the latest addition to the team is Renz Onelia. We partner with grids to provide us technical assistance, particularly with respect to maps and computer simulation and modeling, because we believe that the 6 months that was given to us maybe that is not enough for us to do all the simulations and modeling that are required to come up with our output. Okay, so maybe you will be asking why CRBA or why the agricultural sector. Obviously, as had been mentioned, the impact of climate change and climate-related disasters to the agricultural sector is very, very tremendous. No, so somehow it can lead us to food insecurity, high incidence of poverty and inequality. And remember that Philippines also is ranked 3rd among the most vulnerable countries to climate change. DA in their report cited that from 2010 to 2019, for a 10-year period, a total of 290 billion pesos value or production losses was experienced by the agricultural sector due to climate and climate-related disasters. So just imagine that losses. As also emphasized earlier by our other speaker, there's also a need for science-based and evidence-based resilient systems so that decisions and interventions can be more effective. So when we talk of climate change, obviously the way to address this problem is either through adaptation and through mitigation. So in the project that we conducted, we anchor our framework on the 3 key dimensions of vulnerability. That is on the part of the exposure, on the part of the sensitivity, then obviously on the side of adaptive capacity. Now these three key dimensions, as presented by the IPCC way back 2014, by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is being captured to to be our basis or framework in our study. Okay, so this particular project consider the following approach and methodology. First, we determine the exposure. The exposure here refers to the variability in our temperature and rainfall, so resulting to suitability of our crops to be planted in a particular area. Then the other one will deal on the different climate and climate-related hazards. Then the third one is on the adaptive capacity, before we can come up with our overall vulnerability. So after we have this, we are able to determine the overall vulnerability of a particular locality. The DA or our decision makers now can target or can prioritize interventions or crop resilient intervention for our farmers. Okay. Now, this project also utilizes a lot of secondary data sets, and through the help of our LGUs, workshops and seminars will help to validate our initial output. Okay. So just to present the analytical framework of our study, you can notice there the three pillars, the one dealing on sensitivity, the one dealing on the hazard, and the one dealing on the adaptive capacity. There are several parameters that will determine these three pillars. For the sensitivity aspect, the changes in temperature and the changes in precipitation or rainfall were considered, while on the hazard aspects, there were 8 hazards that were considered, including typhoon, flooding, landslide, drought, erosion, saltwater intrusion, sea level rise, storm surge. And on the side of adaptive capacity, there were 8 major capitals that were considered, and each capital have different parameters for consideration, like economic, natural, social, human, physical, institutional, and anticipatory. So using this analytical framework, okay, so we come up with and using several secondary data sets, we model the future scenario of these 4 provinces. We ran several models for this, and the models were also being validated through the participation of our LGU partners. Okay, so what we have here is actually the RCPs. This is the result of the different global circulation models, and we know that when we talk about RCP 8.5, this is the business as usual scenario. So we run this using several statistical and spatial models. Okay. So essentially, this part here involves several set of computer modelings and simulations. We utilize also the different climatic data coming from the different sources all throughout the world to come up with the projected scenarios in these 4 provinces. So as I mentioned, these are the hazards that were considered and the sources of our data sets for these hazards. And for the adaptive capacity, the indicators that were mentioned earlier. So what the output of this particular project will be graphical. It maps and several graphical presentation of the different conditions of each municipality in 4 provinces. Okay, so what we did here is to conduct several workshops and consultative meetings, particularly those technical persons coming from the agricultural office of the different municipalities in the 4 provinces. So we conducted this in Cavite State University. So our approach there is we conducted this by batches. So 2 batches, with 2 provinces per batch. So we utilize also GIS for our maps. And through this software, particularly we use the free software of GIS, the QGIS, to identify the major crops that are grown in the different localities within the study areas. Then after the crops were identified, maps are produced. Okay, so initially, our partner suggested for the 4 provinces to consider the different major crops. For Batangas, we have 6. We have 7: rice, corn, coffee, cacao, pineapple, cassava, and coconut. For Cavite, we have 5: rice, corn, coffee, cacao, and pineapple. For Laguna, we have 6: rice, corn, coffee, cacao, pineapple, and coconut. And for Rizal, we have 3 crops: rice, corn, and pineapple. Okay. So what as part of our output is a map that will look something like this now. So what you will notice here is a comparison between the crop suitability of the 4 provinces when we consider planting coffee in these areas. So the one on the right is the scenario that is the result of our modeling on the year 2050. So the green ones, the green colored ones, are still suitable for planting coffee, but those that are color red will no longer be suitable. So yun yung ating interpretation sa mga maps na ito. So overall, if we look at the result of the modeling based on increasing temperature and changing rainfall pattern, by year 2050, there will be areas that will no longer be suitable for coffee production. Similarly, also for rice, you will note that somehow there is not much, there is no significant change as to the suitability of the 4 provinces to rice crops. No? So areas that are planted to rice now can still be planted to rice in the next the year 2050. This is for maize, for corn. So you will note that there is a significant decrease in the suitability of the 4 provinces when it comes to maize. So this portion here, this initial result of the maps are, of course, something to do with the crop stability as affected by the changing temperature and rainfall or precipitation. So overall, if you want to look at the different suitability of Cavite with respect to the different major crops identified by our partners, so you will note that there will be areas that are considered no longer suitable by year 2050. Similarly, also for Laguna, we will note also that the same pattern, the same pattern, although variability can also be observed with respect to the different municipalities. So yung kulay green, as I mentioned earlier, suitable pa rin. Yung kulay dark color or reddish color ay hindi na siya suitable. Okay. This is for Batangas, and this one for Rizal. On the other hand, on the second component of our project determine also the hazard present, or the index of hazard index for each province. So what we have here is a summary of the hazards that were considered with respect to the province of Cavite. So you will note there that the higher the color, the higher would be the hazard index. So for flood, for typhoon, for drought, for landslide, for soil erosion, so different hazards will impact the province differently. So meron tayong nakikita na iba't ibang colors sa ating mga maps. So overall, if we want to look at the overall hazard index of Cavite with respect to the mentioned or the enumerated hazards, you will note that there will be areas indeed that are very high in terms of hazard. And very few, meron lang low ang kaniyang rating. So if you are going to look at these areas, you will note that we have a very high hazard index for most of the upland areas in Cavite in particular. Okay? So ito yung ating example ng ating mga hazard maps. So you will note that per hazard ay meron na tayong makikita kung saan siya mataas mag-manifest. So using this kind of information, our Department of Agriculture or our local government unit can now include this information in their local government plans. So kung ano mang interventions they want to have in a particular area, they can refer to this map so that they will be guided as to the type of hazard that will be existing or that will be prevailing in their particular municipality or locality. So this is an example of a blown up drought risk or hazard in Cavite. So you will note that there are areas that are exposed to drought condition in the next in the year 2050. Okay. So also for soil erosion, this is for the landslide. And what we have here is a summary of the hazard conditions that we are anticipating in the province of Laguna. So overall, on your left screen, overall, you will note also that a big area, a big portion of the province will have a moderate to a very high hazard index. Okay, so this particularly for typhoon. So the risk for flood, the risk for drought in the province of Laguna. Okay, and this is the overall hazard index. This is now for the province of Batangas. Okay, so overall, those dark areas have very high hazard index. So if the province will have a very limited fund, or the Department of Agriculture can prioritize these dark colored areas when it comes to coming up with interventions, particularly in the agricultural sector. So this is for Rizal. Similarly, also a very high hazard index or score can be observed in most of the in the upper portion of the province. Tanay, Antipolo, Rodriguez. These are just some of the municipalities that have very high hazard scores. Okay. So again, for the adaptive capacity, although we are exposed to several hazards, we have also a capacity to counteract or to go against the hazards that we are facing. So this is what we call the adaptive capacity. So as I mentioned earlier, the adaptive capacity of a certain system or a municipality or province is anchored on those parameters that I mentioned earlier: economic, institutional, and the like. No? So the overall adaptive capacity of Cavite, you will note that most of the municipalities have very low to moderate adaptive capacity. So, ilan lamang yung mayroong high adaptive capacity. So, we have to balance, of course, para bang titingnan natin, we have to balance between the risk and the ability or the adaptive capacity to counteract those risks. Ganon din sa Rizal, sa Batangas, Laguna, ito na yung comparative adaptive capacity ng 4 na provinces. So again, would like to emphasize na yung mas darker ang color ay mas lower ang kanilang adaptive capacity. So then again, once we were able to establish the hazard index, the sensitivity index, or the crop stability, then the adaptive capacity of the province, we can now synthesize these 3 major components to determine the overall vulnerability of the province. So ginagawa natin dito, kinukumbine natin lahat ang mga scores nila to come up with our overall vulnerability index or score for the province. So meron tayong theoretical basis o na inadapt para magawa natin yon. And we come up with the following vulnerability index for the different provinces. Okay, so ito na yan siya. So you will note na somehow kahit minsan kanina ay mataas ang kanyang hazard index, pero mataas naman yung kanyang adaptive capacity, yung kanyang overall vulnerability ay hindi rin naman ganun ka taas. But however, when we speak of the overall vulnerability of the area, you will note that Rizal, for example, have a very high vulnerability compared to Cavite, for example, where we only have 1 municipality that scored very high in terms of vulnerability. For Batangas, there are several municipalities as well as for Laguna. So, ano ang kwento natin dito after we're able to determine our vulnerability index? As I mentioned earlier, ito yung sector that we need to focus. Kasi alam naman natin, ito yung agriculture sector ang nagbibigay sa atin ng pagkain. Dapat sila ang ating bigyan ng tama na intervention. Sabi natin kanina, science-based and evidence-based interventions and adaptation practices. So after we have conducted the vulnerability assessment and established the vulnerability index of these 4 provinces, we come up also with determination of the different climate resilient agricultural practices in the area. So para meron naman tayong sound basis for recommending what type of adaptation practices can be implemented for each locality. So nagkaroon tayo ng cost-benefit analysis, nag-identify tayo ng iba't ibang mga climate resilient agricultural practices at ating sinubject sa ating cost-benefit analysis para makapag-come up tayo ng recommendation sa ating final report ng ating project. Okay? So as concluding remarks to this particular project, kwento natin, masabi natin that CRVA was done using modeling and a series of consultative workshops from representatives and other stakeholders. Okay, we can also say that this can be used to inform and guide decision makers, particularly in this part. In this project, we have the Department of Agriculture as our major client. No? We can also use this information to guide our extension staff as well as our private sector, where to identify geographical areas or municipalities that are in most need of interventions. At ano yung ating mga interventions? This package of interventions are needed for each group geographical areas, as I mentioned, could be adoption of climate resilient agricultural practices. So it can also open the door for cross-sectoral collaboration, as what we have done. We collaborated with DA to come up with these science-based and evidence-based maps for or vulnerability assessment of the 4 provinces. We can also involve the private sector, particularly our farmers, primary sector. We can also combine the wealth of previous expertise from various CRBAs, because this CRBA that we have conducted is may be limited to the agricultural sector only. Then we can quantify the current and future suitability of key agricultural systems. And this the result of sensitivity analysis can be used to target areas to do more detailed crop modeling work. So I think with that, samahan natin ang ating mga magsasaka magtanim ng pag-asa at tagumpay. Sabi nga ng isang agri-technopreneur kahapon sa aming convention, a person who wakes up early in the morning and works the whole day deserves to be rich. Sila yung mga farmers natin. Okay. Thank you very much. That ends my presentation.
Maraming salamat po. Virtual round of applause for Dr. or Engineer Bobby Cero. Maraming salamat po, sir. Napaka-touching naman ng last statement na yun. No? Deserve talaga ng ating mga magsasaka at ng iba pa nating mga kasamahan sa community ang suporta ng mga taga-academe, ng researchers, at syempre po ng ating pamahalaan. Kaya tutulungan natin sila na magtanim. Hindi lang sama ng loob no? sa mga nangyayari sa lipunan, kundi of course ng pag-asa at tagumpay para din sa ating bansa. It's really an honor to hear that very fresh na report po. Mainit-init pa, kakatapos pa lamang this month, and grabe yung dinanas ng research journey nila, sir, no po, sa mga na-pending dyan, sa mga research works nila because of the pandemic. So this is an example na we can continue, na we can proceed kasi meron talaga tayong mga pwede pang paggamitan at marami pong matutulungan na members ng community. So diniscuss ni sir yung simula sa umpisa, like how it came up, no, yung ating pong conceptualization, yung ating mga assessment, yung mga tools na ginamit. So, sa mga nagno-notes dyan, alam niyo na yung mga sample. Kanina may nabanggit si sir na watershed approach, no, yung kay Sir Noel, si Engineer Bobby naman po, may nabanggit tungkol sa mga modeling, yung mga simulation, and all these workshops that we need to go through until, of course, we are able to recommend this research outputs for utilization kasi very helpful talaga, no, ang mga map for, like this one, for us to understand ano na yung sitwasyon natin at paano natin matutulungan yung community natin. Sabi nga ni Sir kanina, to those in most need of intervention. And that's exactly what extension is about. Not to intervene so we can help them out. At sabi nga yung climate resilient agricultural practices, that's the way to go. No, yung talagang ating pag-address dito sa climate change situation natin. So muli po, maraming salamat po, Sir Bobby. Yan, so marami na po may message dito sa Facebook, may mga nagtatanong na, malalaman na po natin kung sinong mapipili sa mga katanungan na yan. At syempre, dahil ang pagtatanong ay bahagi ng pag-iisip at ang pagsagot naman sa mga ito ay makakatulong sa higit na pagkaunawa, dadako na po tayo sa ating open forum to be facilitated by the Extension Coordinator of CvSU Imus Campus, Ms. Elvira Pakinggan. Good morning po, ma'am.
Good morning po. Good morning po sa ating lahat.
Good morning, ma'am. The floor is yours po.
Okay po. So magandang umaga po sa ating lahat, sa mga nakiisa po sa Istorya Episode 2 natin at sa 218 po nakasama natin sa FB Live. So maraming salamat din po sa ating mga magagaling na speakers, Sir Noel, Sir John, Ernest, and Dr. David Cero. So maraming salamat po sa binahagi nyo. Marami po talaga kaming natutunan ngayong araw na ito. Okay. So may mga katanungan po dito galing po sa ating FB Live. So mayroon po yung unang pong tanong natin galing po kay Sir RD Altares. So para po kay Sir Noel Sedigo, may pag-aaral po ba tungkol sa effectiveness ng reforestation program ng iba't ibang LGU and provincial government ng Cavite?
Sinagot ko na din yan doon sa FB chat actually. Kasalukuyan po ay si Ma'am Manette Polido ng PG Engr ay may proposal na dyan para sa kanyang master's study sa Lasal. at gusto niyang aralin kung how much ang survival rate ng aming tree planting activities sa 4 na watersheds.
Okay po, thank you po Sir Noel. So, next question po natin. Actually, yung question po, nung nagbabrowse ako, hindi po siya ganun kadami kasi po siguro sa sobrang gagaling talaga ng mga speaker natin na ipaliwanag po ng maayos. Kaya limited na po yung question na naipost. Ilang beses ko pong binrowse, baka mamaya nagahang lang yung aking FB, pero kukonti po talaga yung question. So, ibig sabihin po, na-explain po kasi talaga at napakagagaling po ng ating mga speaker ngayon. Virtual clap naman po para sa mga speaker natin na maraming naitulong or na-share sa atin ngayong araw na ito. So, pangalawang question po natin. So, Sir, galing po ulit kay Sir RD Altares. Sir, mayroon pong specific coffee variety ang included po sa study. Thank you po, Sir, and regards po.
Sir Ernest yata yun? LV, ano?
Yes po.
Actually, ma'am, yung for PSF po, yung based dun sa mga project proposals na na-receive natin over the past few years, actually, coffee is actually one of the given ito isa siya sa mga major sources of income from the agricultural communities. So actually, yung mga project proposals po tayo na-receive proposed by LGUs which are focused on provision of alternative livelihoods for farmers, which includes yung pag-take into consideration din or pag-explore din ng mga research initiatives which may also which may eventually be tangible para sa pag-pursue po ng mga climate responsive seedlings or coffee varieties which may be beneficial to our farmers.
Okay po. Thank you po, Sir Ernest. And then yung last question po natin. So pwede po bang ma-share, bali sa tatlong speaker po natin ngayong araw, pwede po bang ma-share nyo sa aming lahat kung ano po yung mga challenges na na-encounter nyo po sa habang ginagawa nyo po yung inyong mga project? Sino po yung gustong mauna?
Sir Bobby muna.
Sige, seniority naman yan. By age. Well, anyway, challenges ng normally when we conduct researches, madami talaga tayong na-encounter na mga challenges. Sa implementation pa lamang, we are constrained with our usual auditing rules and regulation. Kaya minsan ang ating timeline ay hindi natin nasusunod. That's one. That's dapat kung tayo ay may implement ng project, i-factor ninyo yung procurement, for example, yung mga gamit ninyo kasi kailangan talaga yan dahil time-bound ang ating project, lalo na kapag externally funded. Pangalawa, yung sa amin personally, yung current project namin ngayon, yung naging malaking challenge talaga kasi yung aming methodology nag-involve ng participation ng iba't ibang stakeholders at ng mga LGU partners. Then nagkaroon tayo ng ECQ, nagkaroon tayo ng pandemic. We cannot gather them together in isang singular place na makuha natin ma-validate yung aming mga initial output. Yun yung pangalawang challenge. So although nabigyan din naman ng paraan, we have conducted an online workshops and consultations na nabigyan naman din ng paraan. Pero iba pa din kapag face to face talaga. Yung pangatlo siguro, challenge natin na na-encounter po in implementing project like this ay yung minsan hesitant na yung ating mga respondents doon sa pagsasagot, pagtatanong. Although it's just a matter of context and approach naman, pero mayroon pa rin totoo yung pabiro kong sinabi nga kayo na research tayo ng research, wala naman tayong ginagawa. Maaring mayroong konting katotohanan yon doon sa ating mga respondents. So malaga pa rin na i-keep natin, ma-maintain natin ang trust ng ating mga respondents. At kung tayo ay nagbigay sa kanila ng mga pangako o salita, dapat totohanin natin. Otherwise, they will lose trust in us. At mahirap yon. Pag wala ng tiwala sa atin, yung ating mga supposedly mga recipients natin or ang ating mga beneficiaries ng ating research output ay somehow na diminish yung ating quality ng ating output. Yun siguro ang aking may share.
Okay po. Thank you po, Dr. David.
Susunod ako, parang Ernst, mas bata ka naman sa akin. Ano? Okay. Susunod ako, actually, sa amin talaga sa environmental research ay time ang kalaban lagi because we always consider dry seasons, wet seasons, weather conditions. Lalo sa amin po ay externally funded, halos lahat ng mga researches. And our research would just take, actually ang gusto nila, 4 months, 6 months. Wala kaming research halos na umabot ng 1 year. So, bukod sa administrative accounting delays, may problema din tayo talaga pagdating sa mga logistics, karamihan Sir Bob, talaga logistics ang problema sa environmental research. But we are very lucky sa CvSU, meron tayong GIS and remote sensing laboratory. That makes it easier for us sa mapping, kaya magaganda ang maps natin na na-provide. Tapos, yung pangalawa, bukod sa time constraint, ay yung ating manpower. Actually, kasi kung 6 months lang na employment, we need a lot of research assistants. Kailangan i-employ namin sila to gather data sa field. 6 months lang kasi, so minsan ang hirap kumuha ng mga researchers na magagaling din na mga research assistants for just a short period of time. Tapos, yun nga, dahil pinaka-importante sa amin na ma-deliver kaagad yung mga results, kaya nagkukumahog. So, again, writers, di ba, researchers, ito yung the usual na mga problem. Pero tingin ko naman, Sir Bob, ay very useful yung mga ginagawa natin sa department, ginagawa sa Cavite State University. These are the most useful na mga research. Hindi tayo ma-accuse na research lang. Kasi we really were able to share this with the local government units. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sir Noel. So, and last but not the least, Sir Ernest.
Yes, so from the end of PSF po, actually we have yet to really figure out or identify yung mga challenges encountered by our approved projects throughout the course ng kanilang implementation phases. Especially right now, we are currently restricted from conducting M&E kasi yun nga po, we are currently in the pandemic and there are restrictions in place. But then, siguro let me share na lang din po that throughout yung project development process before ma-approve yung mga proposals for the PSF, one of the major issues we observe is yung may limitations sa technical capacity within the LGUs dun sa pag-formulate ng kanilang mga project proposals. At the same time, limited din po yung kanilang manpower dun sa pag-develop ng kanilang project proposals. And right now, given these circumstances we are in, these persons who are expected to formulate or be in charge dun sa pag-develop ng project proposals are the same persons who are charged or who are in charge dun sa pag-monitor na situation sa kanilang specific localities in monitoring the COVID-19 pandemic right now. So yun po talaga yung isa sa mga concerns na tinatry natin din i-address or i-cure with the operationalization of the PSF. So which is why in trying to address these types of concerns, then the CCC is actually endeavoring to reach out more to our higher education institutions because we see how important their role is sa support and pag-assist sa mga project proposals ng ating mga LGUs. So not necessarily sa implementation phases lang. So actually po, we've also sat down actually with some LGUs who have already partnered or identified some linkages with their respective SUC. So nakikita rin natin sa pinresent kanina ni Sir Noel at ni Dr. Cero, yun ang aming involvement na rin actually yung ating mga higher education institutions sa pag-pursue ng mga climate adaptation projects. So dito din natin nakikita na yung mga research na ating pinaproduce is nagiging tangible and nagmamaterialize naman siya eventually. So yun po.
Okay, thank you, Sir Ernest. So may mga comment po kasi great speaker. Thank you very much to all the speakers for the very informative information na talaga namang ang dami naming natutunan ngayong araw. And may isang question po to all. Naitanong na po yung mga challenges. Paano nyo po na-address ang mga ito? Galing po kay Ma'am Badet.
Sir Bob.
Okay, akala ko yung youngest to oldest. Bale. Well, as I mentioned earlier, sabi ko naman kayo na, yung challenge namin na naranasan dahil nga time-bound yung ating project at nagkaroon ng pandemic, pumutok pa yung bulkan, isipin nyo, nag-workshop kami noon, tapos may bagyo pa, nag-signal number 3 pa tayo sa Cavite that time, yung ka-schedule namin na workshop ay kinancel dahil nga wala nang pasok and the like. We thank technology also. Kasi through technology, we are able to kahit pa paano, not really kahit pa paano, na nabigyan natin ng paraan na somehow masunod yung konteksto ng methodology ng project through online or virtual meetings like this. No? So, pangalawa, siyempre, maging flexible din tayo. Although mayroon tayong sinusunod na mga Gantt charts sa ating research, mayroon tayong mga sinusunod na methodology, pero hindi naman necessary na magiging rigid talaga tayo. Maging flexible din tayo depende sa pangailangan ng panahon. So, yun ang ginagawa na rin natin. So, pangatlo siguro, kung paano natin na-overcome ang ating yung sa aspeto naman ng administrative concern natin, tiyagaan lang yon, no? So, kailangan talaga bumili ng maraming patience, bibili ng mag-stock ng madaming pasensya. Kasi part of government regulatory requirements naman yung mga binabanggit natin na somehow ay delay somehow sa ating mga processes. So we have to live with it, anticipate. Ika nga.
Dadagdagan ko si Sir Bob. Yun namang mga administrative challenges ay within our means na maayos natin. So in the future, siguro mapa-improve pa natin. Pero alam nyo, yung pag-gather ng data talaga sa field, dugot pawis yan. Akala mo, ang dali-dali ilagay ng graph ng stream flow measurement. Ano? Pero kung nakita nyo yung mga RA natin, kulang na lang buhay ng lumalangoy doon sa mga ilog para lang masukat talaga yung ating mga stream flow. Ganun din ang pagbaba, ha? Ang lalalim ng mga ilog sa Cavite. So pag ikay bababa doon, tapos parang tingin ko naka 45 degrees yung dadaanan ba. Yung mga bata na lang pinababa ko, ako nasa itaas na lang talaga. But a very good technology that we have at Cavite State University ay yung ating remote sensing laboratory. I guess we now have the very, very high capacity for spatial analysis at this point na ang ating GIS at saka remote sensing. And lately, we signed up, Sir Bob, ng Memorandum of Understanding with NAMRIA for them to closely help us in sharing maps, sharing logistics para countrywide ay pwede na nating gawin yung ating remote sensing and geographic information system researches, spatial analysis. The rest, we really owe that to data gathering to our matatapang na mga ENSAI students and other engineering students who go to the field, risk their lives to gather data. Ngayon lang talagang pandemya, we said, no muna. Hindi natin kaya to. We have to slow down a little. Pero after, ayan, tuloy na naman ang mga buhay pag-gather ng mga data. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sir Noel. So, Sir Ernest.
So, given nga po na everything has revolved towards virtual arrangements na sa pandemic. So, yung capacity building initiatives namin, nag-translate na rin siya into virtual setups. So, fortunately enough naman po, yung ating PSF e-learning are currently in the process lang po siya for enhancement ng ating course curriculum. But then, it has actually run for 3 batches na since 2019. So, actually, we're quite advanced on that part because since even before the pandemic started, we're actually implementing this initiative already. So the good thing with this pa po is that our most of our participants are from vulnerable communities. Usually meron silang difficulties or challenges when in terms of securing internet connection na stable. Yet we see the completion and the accomplishment rate in sa number of our participants every batch, and eventually nakakapag-formulate sila ng draft PSF project proposals. Eventually we look forward then that makapag-develop na sila ng full-blown na pwede natin i-submit for evaluation na ng entire people who form part din sa evaluation process ng project proposals.
Okay,
So that's
thank you po.
how great po yung setup right now.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you po, Sir Ernest. Sorry. So may follow-up question po dito. So galing po kay Sir RD Altares. Meron na po ba tayong pag-aaral na nagawa for the adoption of agri-plants? Meron na po bang mga identified climate resilient crops na maari po nating magamit in line with the projected or modeled maps po?
I think ako sasagot ng simula.
Yes, sir.
Kasi related doon sa study namin. I believe that the CAFENR, yung ang college natin sa Agriculture, Food, Environment, and Natural Resources, meron ng mga initiatives. No? So to go along the line of climate resilient agricultural practices. So sina Ma'am Ana, yung kasama namin sa team, ay may nababanggit na mga approaches. Kahit ang buong Pilipinas, kung ating gagawa ng documentation, kung ano-ano yung mga CRAs na mayroon tayo sa Pilipinas, actually madami na. Kasi yung mga ginagawa naman pag-adapt sa climate change naman, hindi naman bago sa ating mga farmers. Because some of these practices have been with them for so long a time. No? Pero ang medyo kulang nga lang natin ay hindi siya documented, or maaring totoo lang sa isang lugar, o maaring natin i-transfer naman or i-involve i-promote na ma-adapt din sa ibang localities. Pero I believe we have RD, I think mayroon tayong mga listahan ng mga researches dealing on CRAs.
Yeah. Dadagdagan ko lang din. Actually, doon sa watershed researches namin sa department, ay nag-data banking tayo, Sir Bob, sa mga indigenous species, na mga trees, plants, herbs, medicinal plants, kasama na grasses, including fauna, including animals. So lahat po ay naka-data bank sa atin sa department. Ang purpose noon, kasi we believe, kapag pagdating siguro, Sir Bob, sa climate resilience, yung ating mga endemic or yung ating mga native species most likely would be resilient or would survive. So we just did the banking lahat sa atin para kasama yan, well documented, pati pictures. Hindi nga lang yung DNA something, they do that for DNA studying sa DNA nito mga species na to. But we have a list of our endemic species sa buong Cavite po. Parang ang ginawa kasi natin sa buong Cavite, hindi lang tubig, vulnerabilities, pati mga species, pati lupa, ay ating binabank lahat sa ating Integrated Information Management System. At I think sa buong probinsya, we're very proud. Tayo lang ang halos nag-data bank talaga halos lahat sa mga data na ito, which they can use in the future, in the next 20, 50 years.
Digdagan ko na, Sir Noel, kasi na-recall ko, na-involved din tayo sa project sa coffee. So siguro, sagot kay RD, particularly pagdating sa coffee, mayroon na tayong mga identified na mga CRAs. Kasi kiniklaim natin ang Cavite ang isa sa mga leading provinces when it comes to coffee growing. In fact, nasa atin yung NCR deck eh. So malaking bagay yon na yung ating mga researches on coffee, lalo na pagdating sa climate change adaptation and mitigation ay may labas natin. So yun lang siguro.
Thank you po. Sir Ernest, may i-add po kayo?
Wala naman po akong ma-add specifically for researches, but then again, as was discussed a while ago, we're open, or we take into consideration yung pag-pursue ng mga researches for these types of climate technologies and innovations to those proponents who are interested to access the fund. So if the technical capacity is already there, so I guess kumbaga ready na po tayo to pursue more and request for funding for these types of undertakings.
Okay, maraming salamat po muli sa ating mga speakers, Sir Noel, Sir John Ernest, and Dr. David Cero. So thank you so much po. Balik po tayo kay Ma'am Eileen.
Salamat po sa ating mga magagaling na mga tagapagsalita at kay Ms. Elvira for facilitating this open forum. Sa punto pong ito, dadako na po tayo sa formal na paggawad ng Certificate of Appreciation sa ating mga tagapagsalita this morning. Let me read the content of the certificate. Republic of the Philippines, Cavite State University Indang Cavite presents this Certificate of Appreciation to our speakers in grateful recognition of their invaluable expertise as resource speaker, leading to the successful holding of the Episode II, Sustainable and Collective Efforts to Address Climate Change as part of ISTORYA, a webinar series conducted by Extension Services in partnership with the College of Agriculture, Food, Environment and Natural Resources, College of Arts and Sciences, College of Engineering and Information Technology, and CvSU Imus Campus, held on April 29, 2021 via Zoom and Facebook Live. Signed, Dr. Robles, University President. Muli, palakpakan po natin. Let's award the certificate first to Associate Professor Noel A. Sedigo. Let's also give a round of applause to Mr. John Ernest M. Mateo. And of course, to Dr. David L. Cero. Mabaha po ng mga pasasalamat sa ating Facebook Live. So muli marami pong salamat. Sabi nga po ni Billy Calderon dito sa Facebook Live, hooray Ensign student, ni Sir Billy Calderon. At totoo po yun, nabanggit nga ni Sir Noel kanina, bukod sa ating mga project leaders, sa ating mga magigiting researchers, ang ating matatapang at masisipag na research assistants at matulungi ng mga support staff sa mga project na ito ay bahagi ng mga kwento at istorya ng tagumpay sa gantong uri ng mga pananaliksik at mga proyekto tungkol sa climate change. Para naman po sa ating mga dumalo at nakibahagi sa gawain ito, ipadadala po ang inyong mga sertipiko ng partisipasyon matapos po ninyong masagutan ang evaluasyon na makikita nyo po ang link sa Facebook maya-maya lamang at sa mga nasa Zoom naman po ay dito sa Zoom. Ito po ay kailangan nating sagutan upang mapagtibay pa po natin ang ating mga gawain, mapaghusay pa po natin ang ating mga webinar at iba pang extension activities, and syempre po para ganap nyo pong matanggap ang inyo pong mga certificate sa paglalaan nyo po ng panahon ngayon at pakikinig sa ating webinar. Para po sa pangwakas na pananalita, tawagin na po natin ang masipag na Campus Administrator ng CvSU Imus Campus, Dr. Marlon Mojica.
Good morning po sa lahat and salamat Ma'am Lady. Masipag sa bahay, ano po. Again, shout out nga daw po sa ating mga napakagagaling na mga tagapagsalita na may kinalaman sa paglaban sa ating mga epekto ng climate change. Ano po? Ito tayo po ang mga climate change warriors. So, matatapos na po ang ating webinar on sustainable and collective efforts to address climate change. Pero hindi natatapos yung efforts natin para mapaunlad. Magkaroon tayo ng environmental development and ma-mitigate natin yung impact ng climate change. So, undoubtedly, climate change is the biggest environmental threat that we are facing right now. In most of the studies conducted, climate change impacts the environment, the economy, the society, and even our culture. All sectors are finding ways to analyze the different sustainability indicators to understand the impact of climate change. So, meron po tayong mga magagaling na nag-present at ipaliwanag kung ano ang hinaharap natin sa climate change. Professor Sedigo highlighted the significant impact of climate change on water resources and the need for a more efficient water management. He also discussed and presented evidences in the fluctuations of other environmental factors, specifically in Cavite, such as water levels, rainfalls, temperature, variability, and occurrence of extreme events. Population is one of the major drivers of the problem. No? According to the study conducted, most of the studies conducted and presented by Professor Sedigo, Cavite has the highest population and population density. This affects human activities as climate change affects supply chain from farm production, processing operations, storage, transport, retailing, and human consumption. This was also mentioned by Dr. Magsino. Professor Sedigo also presented feasible recommendations specifically for the province of Cavite. So sana po ay pakinggan at tingnan at pag-aralan yung mga recommendations na inihain ng grupo ni Professor Sedigo. Dr. David Cero also shared the results of the project CRVA, where CvSU is one of the major proponents. And among the highlights are adaptation and mitigation initiatives in agriculture. So ito po yung pinaka-importanting aspect or sektor ng ekonomiya na dapat na pagtuunan ng pansin, because this is the source of major supply chains. The tremendous impact of climate-related disasters in agriculture also affects food security and poverty and inequality. So food security is an environmental aspect, and poverty, inequality is an economic and social aspect. So ang climate change po ay hindi lamang environmental problem, no? Kundi ito ay nakakaapekto sa ekonomiya natin, sa social aspect, at sinabi ko nga kanina, sa culture. So there is a need for crop resilient interventions through the help of LGUs. And one of the highlights is the conduct of scientific studies related to mitigating climate change. We also presented some graphical presentations of the hazard conditions, overall adaptive capacity of the different provinces in the Calabarzon. And this is a forecast na pagdating ng 2050 ay medyo nanganganib na ang ating rehiyon. No po, particularly ang ating rehiyon, dahil ang pag-aaral nito ay pwedeng makover ang buong Pilipinas. So ito ay isang paalala na kailangan natin talaga ng suporta ng iba't ibang units, local government units, para may conduct ang mga scientific studies na dapat nating magawa. Addressing the impact and minimizing the risk of climate change in a multi-sectoral concern. One of the central issues is climate resiliency. Multidisciplinary projects to achieve ecological resilience must be prioritized. Ecological resilience indicates sustainability, which in turn affects health and well-being of the society. This aspect is the major concern of People's Survival Fund, no? Through the provision of long-stream financial support and for adaptation projects at increasing resiliency of communities and ecosystem. Formulation and submission of development projects aligned with the National Climate Change Action Plan. Among the areas of food security are food security, water sufficiency, ecological and environmental sustainability, human security, climate smart industries, sustainable energy, knowledge and capacity development. So dito po umiikot yung proyekto ng PSF, at may isasagawa po lamang natin ang maayos na proyekto sa tulong ng mga LGUs. So sa ating nakita kanina, ang Calabarzon ay wala pang paghahanda, pero maaaring may mga paghahanda na, pero kailangan ay mag-submit na tayo ng proposal para sa PSF. No po, dahil napakalaking tulong po ng organisasyon. On economic aspect, the financial impact of climate change has been tremendously increasing as most of the countries focus on sustainable development through extensive research and endeavors. In one article, it was noted that ignoring climate change could cause economic damage up to 20% of GDP. We are investing or allocating higher budget to look for new approaches in dealing with impact of climate change. Active involvement of all sectors is necessary to mitigate the aspect of climate change. It's now time for behavioral change, the action as members of communities. Considering separate actions related to climate change mitigation, the assumption of personal responsibility significantly and positively influenced almost all actions. O mga kasamahan, sa 2,500 na nanood sa FB Live, isang masigabong palakpakan para sa ating lahat. At muli po, kailangan natin ng full cooperation ng lahat ng sectors para matugunan natin ang pangangailangan at malabanan natin ang negative impact ng climate change. So muli po sa lahat ng mga nag-present at sa lahat ng mga kabahagi ng ating webinar Series 2, mabuhay po tayong lahat at patuloy po nating ipaglaban ang development, no, towards and mitigate climate change. So salamat po and thank you, Ma'am Eileen. Unmute ka, Ma'am.
Maraming salamat po, Dr. Marlon. Napakagaling niyo pong mag-take down notes.
Nahirapan ako kasi kailangan, hindi ako pwedeng umalis.
It's a very good summary po ng lahat ng ating napag-usapan today. Maraming salamat po, sir. Sabi nga po ni Dr. Marlon, pakinggan, tignan, at pag-aralan. Tunay nga na ang issue ng climate change ay responsibilidad ng bawat isa at anuman ang ating pinanggagalingan, estudyante man tayo, guro, kawani ng gobyerno o katuwang sa pamayanan, meron tayong maiaambag sa pangangalaga ng kalikasan. At sa pagtutulungan ng bawat isa, pwede nating baguhin ang istorya ng waste disposal crisis, pollution at deforestation at gawin itong istorya ng pakikibahagi sa solusyon, hindi lang para sa ngayon, kundi higit lalo sa susunod pang henerasyon. At sa pagtatapos ng episode 2 this morning, ito ay pagsisimula naman ng ating aksyon tungkol sa mga napag-usapan natin sa umagang ito. Pansamantala muna tayo maghihiwa-hiwalay para bumuo ng panibagong kwento ng tagumpay at magkita-kita tayo sa susunod na episode ng Istorya, Impactful Services and Transformative Opportunities in Response to the Needs of the Community and the Academe, hosted by Cavite State University Extension Services in partnership with CAFENR, CIT and IMUS Campus. Sa ngalan po ng organizing committees, muli po kaming nagpapasalamat sa inyong pakikilahok. Ako po ang inyong tagapagdalay ng programa sa umagang ito, Lady Eileen, na nagpapaalala sa bawat isa, dalawang konsepto ang makikita sa salitang mahalaga. Mahal at alaga. Kung talagang mahal o mahalaga sa atin ang kalikasan, dapat natin itong mahalin at patuloy na alagaan. Thank you so much po for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day.